Hello, everybody. Should I jump right in?
Jump right in.
Okay. Thank you all for attending. Hopefully, by the end of this workshop, you will know how to make your very own caramel apples without a huge mess. And you will also be able to teach others how to make candy apples, the caramel apples, without having a large sticky mess. A lot of times people have tried the recipe on the back of the package and they deal with a lot of running of the caramel off the apple. So I'm going to teach you a few tricks that will prevent that from happening, as well as a few of my little recipe tricks that will give you some added flavor as well. Hopefully, you'll have all your supplies. You definitely want Granny Smith apples. I think they're the best apples to use for candy apples because the tartness of the apple goes so well with the sweetness that you're putting on the outside of the apple. Um, as we're kind of going through, I'll kind of, make sure I'm mentioning all the different supplies that I have to make sure that you have everything and that everything is utilized. The first thing I do, I get my I have a large cookie dish, but however big you would like to use, that will fit in your refrigerator is the key. You want to make sure that you spray it with Pam. The caramel is going to stick to everything. So you want to use a generous amount, but you don't want to fry chicken on your pan. But you want a nice generous amount that as soon as the caramel hits it, it kind of sits on top of it. I have apple sticks. Sometimes you can use, if these are hard to find, Hobby Lobby definitely has them. You want them sturdy and heavy enough that they'll hold this heavy apple. So you don't want like a lollipop stick or anything like that. You definitely want the wooden. And if you can't find these popsicle sticks, will do fine. You don't want to stress your hand trying to get them into the apple. So I actually use a mallet um, to make sure that the stick is straight in the apple and then just tapping it in. And it definitely beats trying to push it in yourself because after you do a few of these, you're going to hurt your hand. So definitely maybe a mallet, maybe a small hammer is good to be used just to knock your sticks into your apples. You want to make sure that you wash or rinse your apples in hot water, as hot as your sink will get, so that the wax that they put on the outside of the apple, that you can get off as much of it as you can. I know Trader Joe's has a fruit cleaner that they use to wash your fruit to remove the wax, because the wax will cause bubbles to flare up in your caramel. And if you want like a smooth caramel apple, hot water will rinse that right, will get it off to the point that it won't cause bubbles. So you definitely want to rinse them. I put my sticks in on the bottom of the apple because usually the top of the apple is a little bigger. And so it's the perfect seat for a candy apple. You can do it the other way. It just kind of makes it, it probably will tilt a little bit. So I always put my sticks in the bottom of the apple. And then when you have your small puddle, hopefully small puddle at the bottom of your apple, it sits really well and it sits straight up. So we've greased our pan, we've put our sticks in. You want all this prepped ahead of time so that when your caramel's ready, you can go right to dipping. Um, Two things that I use are the caramel bits by Kraft. These are like really small little caramel pellets. They melt really easily and it takes all the work off of, like, a large log of caramel or, any additional work, and it allows it to melt a little quicker. I do also actually like to add in though the caramel cubes. And these are like individually wrapped cubes. Even if you did maybe 2 bags of the pellet or the bites and then 1 bag of these, for some reason, these are creamier and they make your caramel a lot richer. And you definitely want the consistency of the caramel to be rich so that it doesn't just run off. You don't want it watery and you don't want it too runny because it'll get on the apple and it'll fall right off. And we're also going to try to put toppings on them. So the thicker and the more rich it is, the more it'll hold on to the toppings that you're putting on there. These are really good. Only thing is you have to open each individual one. So maybe while you're watching TV, you can like unwrap caramels and put them in a bowl and have them ready to drop in your pan. So I put my kids to work and made them open some for me so that I have them ready to put in. You want to use, this is one of my caramel pots. You can use like a saucepan, just depending on how many apples you want to make. You do want to make enough caramel though, that when you put your apple in, you're able to easily cover it without trying to like sop it around the pot. The key with that is that the more you dip the apple in the caramel, the more layers of caramel you're putting on it, and the more it's gonna droop and drip off. So you really just want to like get it in there one time and bring it out. You don't want to keep trying to, oh, I want it to be really thick. You don't want that because it definitely will run. So in there one time really quick and out. I do like to cover the apples all the way up to the stick because it's almost like it seals everything in, and your caramel apples, if they're kept refrigerated, can last like 9 weeks in the refrigerator. It's just almost like it preserves it for you. It locks all the natural juices of the apple in. It closes it up, and you keep it in the fridge, and you can have it for the longest time. There, as you get close to the end of your caramel, you may not cover it all the way. There may be a little green showing. You may want that for if you're having a Halloween party and that's kind of like you want some of that to show. The green is so pretty. You can do that. Just know it may not last as long. So you have your pan, your pot, and you want to put your caramel bits in one bag at a time. If you're going to use 3 bags, don't dump all 3 bags in and try to melt them. The key to that is that you do one bag at a time. You melt that one bag down, and then once that one is nice and smooth and a good consistency, then you add in your second bag. So just like recipes that probably maybe like my grandmother had or that your grandmother had, measuring, you could do that, but there's something about just kind of knowing and kind of watching the consistency of it and knowing, okay, this is the consistency that I wanted and this is good. And it may take some trial and error. It definitely has taken me a lot. And there are, batches that I make sometimes that I'm like, this is way too much more runny than I had hoped. So it's trial and error, but I would say lean on the side of less liquid, because you can always add a little more rather than adding too much liquid and you can't back out from that. It's hard to get it rich again once you've made it watery. So you put your 1 bag of caramel bits in, and then this is one of my secrets that I've never shared that I'm sharing with you guys. I use like a flavored coffee creamer, the liquid, to like boost flavor. It just adds another level of flavor to your caramel. Caramel's already good by itself, and then this just makes it like excellent. People will say, oh, your caramel apples are the best. And so I use hazelnut. I've used like a French vanilla. There's like a pumpkin spice one right now that would probably be really, really good. You want to use this instead of water. So the back of the package calls for water, and with either one, you don't need a whole lot. But this just adds so much flavor and a little bit of more, creaminess. Understandable if you're like lactose intolerant or don't want to use, or vegan and don't want to use water, will definitely work the same way. You definitely don't need very much of it. So I don't have a measurement for you, but I will say you're literally only putting, and maybe I'm showing how country I am right now by saying a swig. You only just want like a little bit at a time. And you're watching your caramel the whole time to make sure, number one, that it doesn't burn, and number two, that it starts to melt and that you're stirring. This is not something you can do and walk away from the stove. You literally need to stand there the whole time, constantly stirring it. If you walk away for even just a minute, it'll burn. It's so sticky and it gets to the bottom of that pan, and you're putting your stove on medium high is what I like to use. And so it won't take long at all for it to burn. And you may go back and you may go to stir it, and all the burnt pieces will come up from the bottom of the pot. So you definitely want to stay with it the whole time. And you're just like babysitting it, keeping the caramel moving. You want it to be rich, but you do want it to have some kind of fluency to it. You don't want it to be, sticky and so much that it's dry on the bottom of the pot. Um, and with that, I was gonna say with the first bag of bits, it may seem like it's not happening. Like I feel like I'm just moving rocks around in the bottom of the pan. But once that first bag melts, the other ones will kind of like just join in and melt a little more easy. So we have those in there, and I don't know if you can kind of see how much I'm gonna pour, but just like a little, it's probably not even a third of a cup. It's probably a fourth, not even a fourth of a cup. Maybe just do it a tablespoon at a time is probably a good measurement. Very little, but enough to coat the bits that are in the pan. So you put it on medium high. You definitely want a strong spoon. Sometimes the plastic ones aren't strong enough to really work through the caramel once it gets rich. So a wooden spoon's really good. It's one you don't have to worry about breaking in there. And you just literally keep everything moving. So you want to make sure the bottom of the pot it has some of the creamer on it. You want to make sure that you don't have an area that you're not addressing that could sit too long on the bottom of the pot and not and melt and burn right there. And if I see it's a little too hard to stir, I'll just add a little bit more. And I'm going to show you at the end exactly how rich or what it should look like dripping from your spoon. So you're stirring, and you will develop some muscles from doing this. I've broken a sweat several times, standing here stirring and adding more and more and more, and it is some work, but it will be all worth it in the end. It's will teach you patience because it's nothing you can rush through. You can't just, oh, I'm just going to turn it on super high and let's just melt this real quick. You want it to be a slow process so that it doesn't burn and that you're sure about your consistency. So as you see, I'm working real hard here in the beginning, just trying to make sure that everything's moving around, everything's getting coated, everything is wet with the creamer and not dry and just sticking to the pot. The trick to all this is consistency. You want it to be a little hard to dip your apple in it. You want to have to kind of work to coat your apple. You don't want it to just be watery and just run all over. And also only dipping it one time. If you're gonna make maybe a dozen, that might be good because it allows you when you're dipping, you can leave your pot flat and literally take your apple and go straight down into the pot. It'll cover the whole apple and you pull it right out. And then you don't have to worry about moving it around and putting too much caramel on it. And I'm gonna kind of show you in stages what we're dealing with. You can kind of see how it's chunky still. It's like, oh, so it's too rich because it won't even drip at all. It's just too chunky, but it's nice and wet and it's not just dry to the pot. So you want to keep working with it. You just don't want to rush through it and you don't want to add too much liquid at a time. So now that I feel like this is kind of melting down, I can add just a little bit more of creamer. The more bags you use, the more creamer you'll need. And let me show you this as well. I just added the creamer and see how it's kind of much easier to stir. And I want to work it all the way through everything. Kind of looks like overcooked pork and beans. So you're stirring, you're moving, you're scraping the bottom, making sure no caramel sits on the bottom. You're scraping it off the sides and making sure it's getting nice and worked in. You want to just keep working, building those muscles until maybe you feel like it's still a little chunky, but it's still creamy. And then you can add in another bag. And that's literally, I even rushed to put the bag in because I'm like, oh, I got to stir again. I like to, when I add a bag, add the creamer at the same time, because then all that together allows you to have a good mixture that you're adding to what's already melted. I do have chopped pecans to put on the ones we're going to do today. And I'm also going to show you how to maybe melt some chocolate and put them on top of there. The key with that is that, and the other thing to the caramel apples is once you finish making them, they're not, in my opinion, ready to eat immediately. The caramel is still very soft. And so anything that you put on it is going to kind of make it droop a little bit, and it's going to still be super sticky. So when you cut it, it's going to stick to your hands, it's going to stick to the knife. So what I like to do is I'll make my caramel apples, I'll dip them, put them on my pan, and then I put them in the refrigerator overnight so that the caramel can like solidify, harden around the apple, get nice and cold. And you don't have to eat it that way. When you're ready to eat it, you can sit it out for 5 minutes and it'll soften that caramel back up. But at least when you're adding things like chocolate, it's nice and firm. And when you dip into your chocolate, the caramel isn't running off into the chocolate. It's firm on that apple. You dip in the chocolate and it actually allows the chocolate to cool quickly. So after I make my caramel apples, I will put them in the fridge, and it doesn't have to be overnight. It may be okay in a few hours. But you definitely want to, do that. And especially with packaging, they don't do well in the little clear bags, but if you have any kind of like the caramel boxes or like a candy apple box, they'll do much better in those if it's a plain caramel. So you can see like I like the way this is looking. Can y'all see? See how it's got a little run to it, but I still have some chunks. So I need to keep stirring and make sure that it's completely smooth and that there are no chunks in the caramel at all. If they stay in chunks like that, when it gets on the apple, it'll fall off. It's too heavy. So now that I got this so that I don't have to work as hard, and you see I'm stirring much easier, I'll add some of my, the cubes, because this is gonna make it really much creamier. And it'll also help me with the consistency that I don't have to create. They're creamy all by themselves, and it does exactly what I need it to do. Even with the caramel, with the cubes, maybe just add a little bit at a time and see, okay, this is looking exactly the way I want it to look. You may not need the whole bag. You can always put them in a Ziploc and save them for the next time. Again, scraping the sides, scraping the bottom, getting in the corners, getting everything mixed in. And I did do some yesterday, put them in the fridge so that I can show you guys how to add chocolate or add additional, any kind of topping you would want. Of course, the bigger pieces take a little more effort to melt down, but again, the creaminess is wonderful. If you go through all this, you think your consistency is right, and then you dip your apple and you have a huge puddle, you can still work with it. As long as it's thick to some degree, we'll be able to work with it. And I'll show you just how to fix it once you've refrigerated it overnight. I can show you how to fix it and make it, it's all about presentation, make it pretty. So we're getting there. We only have like a few little chunks. So see, that's really what you're looking for. But you see, I have a few chunks that I just need to keep working. That is looking really good, nice and rich. And while I'm doing this, I guess would be a good time to let you guys know that we are on Instagram and Facebook, and we're under Kandy Apples by K. We have a shop, a storefront in Raleigh, North Carolina, but we will start shipping probably in the colder months, which I thought would be now, but maybe mid-November we'll be able to start shipping, and you can order, you'll be able to order from our website. But for right now, we're the first to do what we're doing. You can literally come into our shop and see an array of hard candy apples as well as caramel apples, and we have more than 30 something different flavors, and we change the flavors each week. And you could follow us and see what do we have this week, and then you can have your order shipped to wherever you are. But they don't do well in the heat, so we're just kind of waiting for some consistent cold weather. And I don't know if she's able to bring up some of the pictures of our work as well. All different kinds of designs, anything you can think of. That right there, you can kind of see that we did ice cream sundae, where we did a caramel apple with white chocolate and strawberry crumble on the outside, and sliced it and put a scoop of ice cream in the middle, and that was a huge hit. But our apples can be any color, any flavor. Our most popular flavor is pineapple, as well as cotton candy and cake batter. And everything is very true to taste. We do a lot of special events, a lot of weddings. You saw the gold candy apples with bling sticks, all different kinds of designs. Like it's just endless what you can do with the candy apple. And when they're gifts or favors, people are always amazed because they think they can only get a candy apple when the state fair comes. So when they come to a wedding and get that as a favor, or a birthday party, baby shower, and get that as a favor, they're just so amused by that. So we are getting there. And as soon as I've been adding a little bit here and there, trying to get as much caramel as I can. So you see there that we've been nominated for the Voters' Choice Award for WRAL. You can vote for us on their website for Best Small Business. What else is up there? You see some of the TikTok apples was a birthday party that we did. We also do candy grapes and candy golden kiwi. We try to do a lot of different seasonal fruits. The grapes are a huge hit. We sell them, they're frozen, and they're kept in the freezer. We do them all different kinds of flavors. Those that you just saw were covered in nerds. And that turtle apple right there, I'm going to show you how to make that one because that's our best seller. And that's with the caramel, the chocolate, and then the pecans on the outside. And that is amazing. It's hard to keep those away from my husband and stocked up in our shop at the same time. That cotton candy apple, we like to put fresh cotton candy on those. It's like a marbled look, and we put fresh cotton candy on it, and the candy on the outside of the apple tastes just like cotton candy. So I think this is good. Again, I'm live and Even I sometimes have a pot of caramel that I feel like is a little too runny, and I'm upset with myself, but it's always something that you can fix. Um, so here, let me get the spoon again and show you kind of the consistency of it. It's smooth. There are no lumps in it. That might have been a lump. And it's runny, but it's not watery. Um, and you can do it even more rich than this. It can be much thicker than this because you can better be safe than sorry. Even if it's so rich, you just want to make sure that it's just not burning is the big thing there. So now I'm gonna dip, and I want to show you a trick that will prevent huge puddles around the bottom of your caramel apples. It'll be hard to do, but the more that you do it, the easier it'll get. And I'm hoping you'll be able to see pretty easily what I do. Um, I don't think I have enough in my pot to just dip it straight down and pull it out. So I'm gonna use one hand to tilt my pot. I do have this cork um, warmer thing underneath to keep my pot from sliding because it will slide from underneath. So I've kind of tilted it like this. Here, let me move these so you can even better see as it goes into the pot. And so if you put it in, sway to the one side and sway to the other side so that the caramel covers the where the stick meets the apple, and then take it out, that's more than enough caramel on there to enjoy. And when I take it out, you'll kind of watch and I'll talk you through what I'm doing after I do that so that it lessens the running of the caramel. So I'm putting it in one side, other side out, shaking off all the excess that I can that's running off on its own anyway. And then I use the side of my pot to scrape a circle around the apple and then scrape all the caramel off the bottom so that it kind of looks like that. It's like a circle around it and then scrape the bottom. And now I'm going to sit it on my pan just like that. And what that does is the caramel is going to run anyway to some extent. Let me see if you can see. So when it runs, since you've scraped that circle empty of caramel, it gives somewhere for that excess caramel to run. That caramel is going to run and cover what you scraped instead of running into a huge puddle around the bottom of your apple. So as you can see, it's like slow dripping. Maybe you can't see. See, it's like slow dripping down the apple, but all it's doing is covering what I scraped away. Like that's a huge little trick that you can use so that now you'll have the most petite little puddle around your caramel instead of a huge puddle. And because it's so rich, you don't have to see my face, but because it's so rich, it's gonna drop slowly. If you put them up there and immediately you see a huge puddle, what you actually could do is go back to the stove and add in some more caramel without adding any liquid and stir that in and let that melt down. And that'll give you some more a richer consistency to work with. So you're in, covering up to the stick, shaking, using the side to twirl all that off and scrape the bottom, and then sitting it straight down. And I think that the circle I'm making is probably right around here on the apple. So it's directly around, not too high up, right down here below. So then when you turn it covers exactly where you scraped it from. I hope that makes sense. And so you're just doing this and putting it directly on your lightly greased pan. Right now, they're so pretty being covered all the way to the stick, which I love because again, they'll last for the longest time because of that. But as I get low, or some people just like the look, you can see there's a different way you can dip it where you just put it in and twirl it and take it out. You twirl it one time. You don't cover all the way, so you have that pretty green showing at the top, and you still want to scrape it exactly the same way. And then that way you have an apple that's kind of exposed at the top. And you can kind of see, without me making a mess, see how it's starting to droop, but it's perfect to droop over the area that is empty because we scraped it. It may take a little practice to learn how to move that stick in your hand with one hand, because you're going to need this hand here on the pot, and trying to learn how to twirl it without dropping it may take a little bit of work. I'm trying to think if there's even another way that you could scrape it. If you're not getting good results from twirling it, at the very least, shake it, and then just scrape the bottom. That's fine too. Um, and if it's rich enough, that will do the trick the same way. You're just shaking, and instead of doing the twirl, you may have a little bit of a bigger puddle, but just scrape all the excess off the bottom and place it just the same. I don't know if there are any questions that I could answer. Can you add chocolate directly to the caramel? Um, no, I wouldn't. If I did this part and then went straight to caramel without letting them refrigerate, your caramel is gonna come off. It's gonna run, and your chocolate is not gonna stick to the apple because your chocolate's already warm from warming it up. Now you're putting it on a warm surface. It's just gonna be a runny mess rather than putting them in the refrigerator overnight. And then when they're cold and they hit that chocolate, the chocolate hardens. I use like the chocolate used in the fondue fountains because it's easy to melt and because it hardens quickly. I think you can use chocolate bars, I think she asked, but you will need to add some coconut oil to it because that is so thick and rich when you melt down like Hershey's chocolate chips, even they're so rich that it's not a smooth chocolate look. It's more like it looks like you painted it on there. And it's really too much. And when you go to put a topping on it, it just gets a little too messy and it droops. But with the fondue chocolates, they're so smooth. They already have whatever coconut melting additive that's needed, and so it works really well on the apples. Um, oh, the scraped ring, that's a great trick. I know. I love you guys so much. I'm sharing my best kept secret, but you'll be so happy with yourselves, and the people that get to eat your caramel apples are going to be happy with you too. Um, More than half the battle, I think, is presentation. If it looks beautiful, I mean, you've won half the battle. And then when they eat it, it tastes wonderful too. I mean, it's a win-win. But it could look bad and still taste good, but people won't want to eat it. But if you make these and they're beautiful and they're not messy, people are going to say, "Oh gosh, I gotta have one." Then when they taste it with your hint of flavored creamer, they're going to know that you have something special in yours. You can do as many as you like. If you don't want to use all your caramel while it's still, warm, you could probably put it into a container, a covered container, and use it later. You would try to break it down the same way by putting it in the pot, adding some water or creamer, and working it to remelt it. I've never melted my caramel in the microwave, so I don't know how that would work. But Now I'm getting low, and so you can see it's getting a little harder to cover the whole apple. Might be a little space that's not covered, but instead of keeping the apple in the pot and doing a whole bunch of stuff that's going to make a huge puddle, I still am just going one side, other side, and bring it out. There you go. I think I only have 3 more, and then I can show you. So here's the thing. If you are going to add toppings to just caramel, you don't want any chocolate on it, you just want the caramel, you would need to do that at this stage. Okay. So once the apples go in the refrigerator, let me squat down. Once the apples go in the refrigerator, you're not going to get anything on it because it's going to seal it. It's going to be hardened. But right now, while it's still sticky, that's when you would want to add any kind of toppings directly to your caramel. I'm going to do the pecans. My mom loves these. She's like, that was so good. But you can do M&Ms. You could do Oreo, crushed Oreos. Any topping you use, you do want to make sure it's crushed up and not in big chunks. You want to make them, I mean, they can be medium size, but the smaller, the more you can get on there and the more likely it will stick well to the apple. So if, again, you're doing caramel and a topping, at this stage is when you want to dip into your topping. So you dip it in the caramel. Definitely want to make sure that you get all the excess off. And you go directly to your bowl. And I like to put them all around, but the higher that you put them, and definitely put it on the bottom as well. Then when you turn it this way and maybe some of them start to droop, you still have so much covered on the apple. It's sticky right now. It's the perfect surface for a topping. Now that I had to move around a little bit, I'm at the end of the caramel. I may need to shake it a little more to get that off, and definitely need to scrape it to prevent. And then see how it's, and I'm going straight to my bowl. A round container is best so that you can literally just lay the apple in there with the stick laying on the side. That way you're covering the majority of it, and then it goes straight on your tray. You still want to put those toppings in the refrigerator the same way you would the other plain caramels, because you still want them to harden the caramel too. So I did some last night, and these set in the refrigerator overnight. And I want to show you exactly how this can play out for you. Either you'll have, like, to me, this is perfection. Like you see, that's what a candy apple should look like. And have a huge puddle at the bottom. It's just cute. Or maybe I'm obsessed. One of the two. It just looks good to me. It's neat. If you gave this to someone, they would be like, oh gosh, this looks so good. And it's not, this is not sticky like that soft caramel is right now. It is still a little sticky, but not like that is. And it has very little, puddle. So when we melt our chocolate, I can show you how to do that perfectly. And I'll actually start that. With the chocolate, I put it in a container that is, microwave safe. And I only heat it 30 seconds at a time, because it can burn. If you put it in there, a minute and 30 seconds, it can burn pretty, quickly too. So 30 seconds at a time lets it melt little by little. So that's my pretty perfection apple. This one though is one that I purposely let kind of make a huge puddle. So as you can see, it's kind of hard to come off the plate because it's got this huge frisbee of a bottom. So see, someone might look at that and say, now I failed. It's ugly. but you can fix it. All you have to do, again, because it's cold and it's a little stiff and you want to work with it as soon as it comes out the fridge. So it looks like this. You may have to work a little bit to get it off of even your Pam sprayed pan. It might take a little bit, but all I do is push it down. I'm pushing it down on the apple so that when someone cuts it, they still get this nice big piece of caramel. If you folded it to the bottom, to the core, they won't eat it, or they'll have to eat it by itself. They won't have a piece that has apple and caramel on it. So I just do that. It's fine. It's just added sweetness to the bottom. So anytime I have some that may turn out like that, I just round it, and it's not sticking to my glove. It's cold. It's perfect. And this is probably like a medium-sized little, that's still really good. And I still may, just to make it perfectly rounded, do that. I think I'm gonna try one more time. And so now we'll melt our chocolate, and I can show you how to put pecans, and then we are done. Any more questions? How many bags total did you use? I used 3 bags of the bits, the caramel bits, and then maybe a half a bag of the cubes. And again, you can kind of add little by little. The thing with that, it's not like the hard candy apples where you can't fix it. You can fix it by adding more caramel and stopping whenever you want to. So this looks good. My chocolate is good. I'm just stirring it because it does have some lumps in it, but chocolate melts so easy that as you stir it, it'll automatically melt those pieces. Let me let you see. So you're good there. Now this is hot, or warm rather, and your caramel apples are cold. So you're going to do the same kind of concept that you did with the caramel that we just did plain toppings on. You'll take your apple. Ideally, I love to just dip it straight down because it creates the perfect circle around. You're still shaking all the excess off because you could have a puddle of chocolate as well. With this, you don't need to do the circular scrape. You just scrape the bottom so that there's little to none on the bottom. You can see it's already starting to harden because the apple's cold. And then you go straight into your pecans and on the bottom. And there's your turtle. Same here. If you wanted your chocolate to come a little higher, tilt your chocolate the same way you tilted your caramel pot. Twirl it so that it's a little higher. Shake that excess off. Scrape all that off the bottom and go straight into your pecans. And now, I don't know if the alarm was set off that there are turtle apples down here, but my husband has peeped his head trying to see who's going to be able to eat these. Now, these are the ones that were a little bit, not messy, but had the little puddle around. And so we did that. Now watch how when you put the chocolate on it and you put your pecans, no one would ever know. You treat it exactly the same. Shake off all the excess, still scrape all that off the bottom, and then straight into your pecans. And I do like to do the bottom, make sure something gets on the bottom as well, so that when you put it down, once it cools, when you lift it up, it's not sticking, chocolate doesn't stick to the bottom of the your pan. I'm all about giving the person consuming the apple as much goodness as I can. Oh, so you see, you would never know. It's actually just a bigger apple because of that puddle. And when they cut it, they're going to get that double layer of caramel at the bottom because of the puddle that existed. And that's it. Again, with this, some other toppings, you could do white chocolate and do a topping on top of that. You would treat it exactly the same. You can do, let's see, crush anything. We'll crush cookies, you know, the Oreos, strawberry shortcake, Heath bar, Butterfinger is a real good one. So now you know how to make the perfect turtle and caramel apple. Granny Smith is the best apple to use. Um, Definitely. The tartness of a Granny Smith, along with all that sweetness that you're putting on there, is the perfect combination. One that we're going to have in our store this week is the apple pie, which is the caramel, white chocolate, and then brown sugar and cinnamon on the outside. And you know that Granny Smiths are the perfect apple for a good apple pie. So that combination is amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Um, who else? What were the packaging ideas? So if it is covered, if the caramel is not exposed, you can just use one of these because the caramel never touches the bag and so it doesn't stick. It's perfect. But if you are doing the plain caramel, and I hate to leave y'all, but I can grab one of those, kind of what you see at the state fair. I don't think I have one, but you want to use like what you see in the grocery store. When you buy caramel apples in the grocery store and it has that like plastic little um, container that kind of clips up because, and you definitely want to spray that with Pam as well because it will start to get sticky, but that's the best packaging for each. This is much easier than the plain caramel. Yay, love this. What kind of chocolate did you use? I used I don't remember the brand, but there's any kind of the chocolate melts. So there are chocolate melts that you put in like the fondue fountains. Any of those work well, and they come in like an array of different colors. So you could do this. You could even choose an orange chocolate for Halloween and make your turtles with orange chocolate instead of milk, you know, the brown chocolate, and that would bring some kind of festive colors to your apples. Um, I don't know if there are any more questions or if she wants to unmute and you guys want to ask any questions.
You definitely have one more. Judy wanted to know what power level do you put the microwave on for the chocolate melting?
Yes, so I think it's just on, like, I think ours is on the highest power, and that's probably why I only do it 30 seconds at a time. And then the less you have, 15 seconds may be good. Like if you have a smaller bowl than this, and this was a full bag of chocolate, a little at a time because that melted, you know, really quickly. The milk chocolate I haven't had a huge problem with burning, but the white chocolate will burn. So just little by little, 15 seconds or 30 seconds at a time, just depending on how high your microwave setting is.
Can you use gala apples? I think is the last.
Yeah, you can use any apple that you like. Some people love the pink ladies or the honey crisp. You definitely will get a different flavor because they all have a different level of sweetness. So with those, I mean, they're still very delicious, but you can use any apple that you choose. I still would put the stick in the bottom and you would use the same techniques, Steph, you know, definitely still wash it the same so that you can get the wax off and that you don't have bubbles. And that was the other thing, like you don't want to have any, and it doesn't, you know, really matter, but for the most part, you want it to be smooth. But sometimes that wax is really powerful and it'll create huge bubbles on your caramel. Yep, yep. I'm trying to see if there's any more questions. Hope I covered everything.
For everybody here today, Kim, this was amazing. If you guys would like to unmute your microphone, either ask her a question, say goodbye, or thank you, now's the time to do so. And we really hope that you come back again, Kim, and teach us another amazing candy apple. And for the rest of you, we
I
hope to come back to another Girls Night In online event. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.